Thanks, Mantesh. So I've been at Domo for about 4.5 years. So part of what I'm going to talk about today is the transition from where we went. I started with about 150 employees. We're about 1,000 now. So some of the things that we could do at 150 employees, those things don't scale to where we are now. But I'm going to talk through a little bit about managing a data-driven sales organization. So Domo, as a sponsor of Accelerate, we're a business management platform. So we allow you to bring together your people and your data to manage everything that is important to you in your business in one place. So from a sales ops perspective, it could be things from marketing budget and spend to pipeline, and we'll talk about a few of those things here as we dive in. But essentially, all of us manage KPIs and certain metrics, and we're going to talk a little bit about best practices in that area. So we had our annual user conference I guess it's been about 2 months ago, and our CEO, Josh James, was a huge Cubs fan. So he wanted to get Theo Epstein to come speak, so he came and spoke, and it was really interesting. Any Cubs fans in here, randomly? Giants fans? Red Sox? Okay, so this is relevant. So Theo Epstein, he's pretty well known in the baseball world for breaking a couple of really long streaks. How long was the streak with the Red Sox? 100, we'll call it 100 plus or minus, right? How about the Cubs? Anyone know how long that streak was with the Cubs? 108. Yeah, so he was able to break both those streaks, and he talked a little bit about how he was able to do that. So when he showed up to go take over the role with the Cubs, it was really interesting. They were still doing scattering reports on carbon copy paper. Like, no joke, this was only 5 years ago. And he showed up, and he's getting a scouting report where scouts are writing on these reports. They're not digital, they're not saved anywhere. Literally, it's like the yellow copy goes to the back office, the pink copy goes to Theo, white copy stays with the scout. And it's pretty hard to think that that's just 5 years ago. So he had a really big problem with the culture there. He explained a vision, laid out a vision, ended up laying off about 20% of over time, over the first 6 to 12 months, about 20% of the people weren't on board with the things he wanted to do. So he offered them a path out. But when you think about managing things today in a carbon copy format, that's kind of crazy, right? I think some of us would think if we showed up on the first day of our job and they said, here's your sales team, and they handed us the carbon copy, we'd probably turn and walk the other direction. So he had a real problem with the culture. The impact of the things they were measuring were not the level that he needed as well. So the impact of what he wanted to be able to measure, the scouts were just writing 2 to 3 sentences on these papers by hand, right? You can imagine them sitting watching a baseball game and they're saying, I don't like the way that the ball sounds when it comes off of this guy's bat. I don't like the way this guy stands in the outfield. Like 3 sentences, that's it, and they were supposed to make a decision on whether or not they picked that person in the draft based on those things. So not enough information. So he completely changed the entire culture there and how they measure things, and went to a digital format. He required 2 pages of information, all digital, quantifiable, that he could go and then measure those athletes based off of. I saw the other day that the impact of that measurement, ESPN wrote an article talking about the players he drafted and the people he brought in, and it all aligned with the culture he wanted to have and the vision that he was trying to implement there. So the rest is essentially history. We know that what he was able to do, and he's credited with the turnaround of 2 organizations that really couldn't get off the schneid for about 100 years. So when we're thinking about the sales culture and what we've inherited in some cases when we start a new role, when we have a team, there's things that salespeople do every day that require their attention. So some of these things in your organizations may be bigger or smaller, right? We've got prospecting, we've got commissions, we've got all the things that they're worrying about that may be taking time from the things we want them to be worrying about. So that's some of what we're going to talk about next. All of the slides or the visuals that I'll use today are from our platform, from Domo. So a lot of them with numbers are screenshots from a demo environment. These are all real names because some public shaming for some of our reps is necessary from time to time. So these are some reps. So when we're talking about managing pipeline and getting behaviors to align with the culture and the vision that we have for an organization, what this report is showing, up towards the top left, you can see it says days past next steps. So in this case, we put boards across our entire organization, or the whole sales floor. So we've got screens like this, not quite this big, but close. And everyone can see them when they come in the front door. They come to work, and they know there are certain things that are expected. So what this is doing is the rep at the bottom, Troy Seals, actual Domo rep, some more public shaming. He's got 2 opportunities that are 4 days past next steps. So meaning in our CRM system, they haven't been updated for a while. Some of your organizations, you're thinking, man, if I could have just 4 days past next steps, like that'd be great. I've got things that are 90 days and 100 days and 1,000 days out. But what it is for us is it essentially helps us to know what's going on as an organization. So as I look at the bottom of any of these reports, I can see who's actually engaged with this content. So for me, I can say, you know what? In this case, I've got certain people looking at this report and some that just don't care. Are there repeat offenders? Are there people that are on this report all the time and they never look at it, never log in? Like maybe it's a big thing that I should look at and care about, and maybe it's something that doesn't matter, right? But it depends how you've defined the things that matter within your organization. So if I go and highlight and scroll over one of those, I may decide that, you know what, 4 days is acceptable for our organization. 4 days is not a big deal, but I might want to go click into it, go back to our CRM and see if this is a deal that's perpetually out of sync, right? So for me, it's just an indicator. It's kind of going back to that, you know, is this a carbon copy problem or is this a bigger picture problem? So everyone came here today. I was in one of the main sessions and someone asked how many people showed up on Uber today. Raise the hands. Half, not quite half. But it's really interesting because before we even start the car or before we even leave the hotel room, we've all got cell phones in our pockets and the GPS is running behind the scenes and we're getting some questions answered, right? Those questions could be like if I'm coming down from Palo Alto, it could just be, look, should I take 280? Should I take 101? But you can get more granular than that, right? It might be that there's an accident. It could be like perfect example, I came up off 101 onto 6th and tried to turn on Market Street. Market Street was shut down. I have no idea what was going on Market Street today. It could have been a parade. It could have been anything, but Market Street was shut down, right? So I already knew that I needed to take a different route. So that's what I want. That's the culture that we're trying to instill within our reps, is that when they show up at the office, there are certain things I want them to care about, and they should just see, I don't want to talk about those things, but they need to manage them. And there are other things where I want them to focus and spend a little more of their time. So when we're talking about the difficulty of forecasting, I think we all struggle with forecasting. We're trying to present a picture of what's going to happen with our organization. And sometimes that's a little easier to do, and sometimes there's challenges associated with it. So when we look at forecasting, it should involve every department. So I can have a conversation with marketing, and with marketing, I want to understand, are you going to increase spend this month? You know, with finance, I need to understand how many quota-carrying reps could I have? How many have we modeled? You know, am I under capacity, over capacity? So there's a lot of details that really go into it. But if you don't get feedback from every department, our HR team helps with headcount. You know, we have meetings with them on a monthly basis, so we understand and we're on the same page. It's not a shock if I need to hire someone or if we're trending below a certain threshold and that's impacting the forecast. So you have to create a process. So for everyone and every team, that's just a little bit different. As we think about what the process is, everyone has a CRM system. And for me, this is a really ugly but simple visualization that helps me, right? Like this is nothing fancy. Some of you are probably doing this in spreadsheets today pretty manually. I've set this up so it's an automated view of the things I care about. So a little small in visuals, but that first column on the left with the red and then middle green and lighter green is just stage changes. So all we're trying to track in that case is like what was the stage change on that day. So this could be one day, I get an alert every day that tells me what's going on. So stage change, close date change, and forecast category change. So again, for me, that's an indicator. You know, the red opportunity, I've got that color coded for me to say that opportunity is gone. It's moved to closed loss. So for me, that might be a double click to say, well, why did that happen? Like, there's got to be a reason here. I can go to the CRM and look, but every time we lose an opportunity, I want to understand the details about it. On the close date change, that's another big indicator, or it could be. If a deal, this one was pushed, and I lied before, this is actual rep names as well, so a little more public shaming, just because, I don't know, these reps aren't here, so we can talk about them. So 86 days the deal was pushed. So that's pretty substantial, right? If a deal pushes 86 days, they're saying it's going to close next quarter, but for me, I want to understand a little bit more about why. And then moving a deal to a forecast category commit. So a better visualization that we have would be one like this. For me, this could be for a team, it could be for a region, it could be for an individual. But it's a really clean way for me to understand what the average sales cycle is. That shows 129 days. The forecasted value of total opportunities, and it helps me to see the flow. And for all of you in your organizations, you've got different metrics and you call them different things, but it helps me to see the flow. We call, a marketing qualified lead means it's come in the door, right? It goes to our account development or our BDR team at stage 0, they have a conversation, and then it moves on down the pipeline. So this is a little bit more elegant solution than the one that I cobbled together, but both are really effective in understanding key metrics that I care about. And then if I highlight, in that case, so before I had a full view, I had a full view of everything that was going on in the organization from a number standpoint and from a top of funnel to bottom of funnel. And now I could just look at stage 1, and if I've hovered over stage 1s, I can see the close date time, I can see the value and the count of opportunities in that stage. So again, for me, that's an indicator. Where are we at with those? Like, is the close date substantial? Is it something we need to understand a little bit better? Same thing from proposals. And this, we've done this. I think all of you have probably seen this or deal with this as well. Sometimes we have unnecessary stages set up within our CRM system, and all they are is just a checkbox because they have to move it from one stage to the other, or everything goes from a stage 2 straight to a close. And you need to understand, from the average time when you're sending a proposal or you're starting negotiations, those are key indicators that if you know that number, then you can go manage to it. If you're just doing a daily download or a weekly download or a monthly download from CRM and trying to kind of backpedal into what those numbers are, it's a little bit more difficult to do. So any thoughts there so far? If there's any dying questions, I would be interested to see if others have either dealt with this or kind of faced problems in this area. So feel free to shout them out if there are questions. So the impact on teams and individuals is kind of the next piece that we want to understand. So for us, I might end up pulling data from 5, 6, 7 systems to get an accurate view of the things I really want to measure. So in this case, I've got the inputs like Box and Jira, could be from Apttus, coming in to Domo, right? Because I need all these different data inputs to understand the things that matter to me. Again, there are things that are on the big board that everyone just needs to understand. There's an expectation of a level they have to meet. And then there are things where I want to understand what the strategy is behind the decisions that are made. So once you've got the entire view, it's different for all of you. You've got different inputs in your organization. But now I can go manage things at the rep level. So this becomes really, really impactful. So all you see in this view are 5 cards, right? If I were to go into a live demo of our platform, those 5 cards we could drill into and talk about the details of each of them. But the month June here is the month I'm impacting right now. So if I've gotten to the point where I'm having conversations with prospects the end of April, early May, I've got to know that based on my average sales cycle, the month we're actually impacting is probably June, right? I think a lot of times we forget that when there's a disconnect with marketing or there's a disconnect with what we're actually doing today and how that impacts the future. This is a really good example. The next card, the total I need is 5. So if salespeople know that based on their conversion rate, they've got to go get 5 leads this month to be able to close 2 of those leads 2 months from now, it's a much easier conversation to have, right? Everyone knows what the expectations are. Everyone knows the percentages of close rate, and it becomes a deeper, more impactful discussion than just managing stages in a pipeline. Pacing is another conversation we've had. A real example, we had some new folks join our marketing team, and internally at Domo, we had a conversation about pacing and what was actually going on with our leads. Like, Were leads slowing down? Were we slowing down from stage 1 to stage 2 to a closed stage? And part of the issue is, as we dug in further, is we changed the definition of what those stages were. So going back a few months, we had changed the definition, and things had moved down in the funnel a little bit. So it was good for them to be able to understand that, but for marketing, it was kind of a freak out, thinking, why did sales cycles increase by 30 days? And that wasn't actually the case. It was just more of a back-end issue. And then understanding the next opportunity due date. So if I know that to impact June, I need to go deliver a new opportunity by April 30th, that's a pretty impactful thing to know. As you're thinking about how you manage your business, if your team is aligned where sales ops, marketing, sales, and the executive team have all disseminated information to the point where everyone knows that, at a rep level, how many leads do we need by the end of May to impact July? That becomes a really tight-knit team, and you're talking about deeper results at that point. So the sales ops view. Every person, every team is going to create different visualizations and different content for what works with them. So these visuals may not mean anything to one organization, and they may mean a whole lot to the person who built these reports. But up on the top left, we're just looking at global pipeline. So global pipeline and understanding that pipeline in real time is really impactful. I'm just curious, how many can do that today? How many see a current real-time view of global pipeline? About half. Good job, Sarah. Pipeline by territory is another one. Are we setting our team up for success? Do we have equitable territories? The number of opportunities that come in the San Francisco market, does that equal the number of opportunities that come from 4 states in the Midwest? We need to be able to answer those questions, and it's something that we help set up our team for success when we know those answers, rather than just kind of guessing and putting a finger in the wind. And then again, weekly forecasts and managing these things on a day-to-day basis becomes the big tipping point. The VP of Sales view. One thing that we've done at Domo, and that we've done at different times, our CEO is a very sales-minded CEO. So we've done things like close rates, and a question he asked early on was, okay, we've got the top salespeople, and are they the top salespeople because they cover New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles, or are they really the top salespeople? So then the next question from that is understanding the number of leads per territory and understanding the close rates per territory and per rep. And so what that did from a behavioral change for us is it changed the way we distributed leads. So we created a round-robin format where our CEO said, everyone gets the same amount of leads every single month, and then everything else above and beyond that, I'm going to pretend there's no territories. Leads will be distributed based on who's got the highest closing percentage. So if we've already standardized what a lead is, what a stage 2 lead is, so when it meets a certain criteria, it comes in the door and it's in the rep's hands now to close. But that really changed behavior. All of a sudden we had reps that had territories that might not have been as desirable. They might have had, I think one rep in Minnesota and one down in Georgia had fewer leads, but their closing percentage was higher, and so we needed to fill their bucket with more leads. So understanding the details of what that meant for the company, it drove revenue and really changed the way that we managed the business. A few other things just that are up here. I know that this is probably not the best visualization for a large room, but just understanding the things that are going to help you align and give value to other parts of the organization. The top right here, revenue by lead source, that one can be really eye-opening. Another real-life example of that is we created a new territory or a new vertical to go after based on information like that. So we took a rep. We had, for my entire team, I think it was 17% of the total leads that we got from this vertical that we created had come in, but only 6% of our revenue was impacted from those 17% of leads. So we figured, you know what, that rep should go start a new vertical, and that vertical won't be impactful to take away from everyone else because it was only 6% of revenue. But we do think because it was a higher percentage of leads that rep should be able to be effective there. So lastly, to summarize, it's really important to be able to give everyone access from top to bottom. So when you have an entire organization that's aligned based on the things that matter and the things that really drive revenue and drive performance, if you can have a top-down approach where the executive team knows the things that they care about and they want to share those down to every individual contributor, we see really big changes start to happen. Theo Epstein's a really good example. We've seen it in a lot of organizations where as soon as everyone's aligned, as soon as everyone has access to the data and we've kind of leveled the playing field in the ways that we can, things start to change. Accurate forecasting, it does really require input from everyone. If you're forecasting in a vacuum and you're just picking a number and it's based on gut instinct, it's not based upon historical information and closing percentages and lead flow, it may not be a problem as you're an early organization. For 100 employees, that might not be a problem. That might be the only thing you go with. But as you scale up and move into becoming a public organization, it's a much bigger problem at that scale. And then understanding, I think the biggest thing we can help to do is understand how today's activities are going to impact tomorrow, so that people don't come in and understand, or they're not clear on why they need to have certain behaviors in place today. So as we've kind of implemented some of that, it does have bigger changes, and people start to see 60, 90, 120 days out, is pipeline what it needs to be. And if it's not, we're not having a freak out, right? We're not having a freak out meeting saying, well, why did I miss my number? The freak out happens because the inputs aren't quite there, and you can start to manage those things before it becomes the freak out meeting that I think we've all had from time to time. Well, that's all I've got. Thanks for coming this afternoon. If there are any other questions, I'm free to take them, or you can catch me off stage. One question here.
Are really something that's hampering us because we've got to get one in order to do that sort of analysis of dates and what's changing when and historical look back. So what did you go through when you figured out which tool to use for analytics?
Yeah, it's a good question. The question was, they've been hampered by BI tools or trying to select something. So what process did we go through to be able to select it? So yeah, there are a lot of tools out there to do it. I'm a little biased because I work at Domo and we are one of those tools, but there are other tools and you can do things at different scales. But essentially, it's making sure that you can get the inputs to where you need to manage them, right? I know there are tools out there that do so much, and you can go boil the ocean with them. But really, it's more about aligning on the things that matter, right? It's understanding what the inputs are, how you're going to align on those inputs. I can go back here to this piece, because for me, it's understanding this piece, right? For you, what are those 5 inputs? Like if you know what those inputs are today, that can kind of drive that decision. And if it's just taking an Excel download because that's the only thing you've got right now and adding that to your CRM data somehow, sometimes that drives that decision.
I had a question on your first bullet of the last slide where you say give all the data to all the reps or something like that. So I wanted to give everyone access top to bottom. That's kind of a loaded sentence. Give everyone access to all sales reporting and all sales dashboards.
So we have pages where they have access to, let's say, 8 metrics that everyone can be aligned on, right? Like performance-based metrics, could be lead flow, and then we definitely have metrics that not everyone has access to.
So they don't see the individual pipeline and performance of all the other reps.
That's right. No, they would see their own. So they'd see a filtered view of the things that matter to them. They would see the things that matter for their territory, their customer list. Other reps would not see that rep's customer list.
Okay, so that's pretty safe. Did you have any unintended consequences from just allowing that level of global roll-up access?
Yeah, there are always unintended consequences to doing that. Initially, it will be a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because you're going to give access to people to data that people haven't had in the past, and so you have to be ready for it, right? The best way to be able to get aligned, though, is to if you show an outlier. Like if you show that one rep has closed $1 million deal and the next closest rep was a $50,000 deal, people will start to go ask that rep questions. So there will be some uncomfortable changes that have to happen when you do this, but those things will make your organization better. So for me, it's worth it. Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Colin.